Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time with us to talk about less firefighting, more strategizing, lessons that we've learned from implementing AI for TechOps. Just as a heads up for everybody, if you haven't already, please check in with Olga. You'll get some tickets for our raffle for the Apple Watch today at 1 p.m. at our booth, at our Telescope AI booth. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about what was the problem that we were facing. You may or may not have heard of EPAM. EPAM is $1.5 billion to $2 billion, somewhere in there, depending how the numbers come out this year. Revenue solution provider, about 30,000 people. And we have your typical TechOps challenges, as a lot of our customers do in the Fortune 1000 or the Global 2000. Which is a perennial challenge for IT, which is do more with less, right? How do you do more with less? Well, you add on top of that challenge the unique challenge for tech, which is a rapidly evolving landscape of technologies and core capabilities. People demographics, we in our industry, perhaps more than others, are dealing with the millennials and now the Gen Xers, or the iGen generation, or whatever they're called, right? Or Z, or pick a name, right? So last but not least is the chronic shortage for talented individuals. There's a talent war, especially in the Bay Area, but anywhere else as well, you can definitely see that that's a reality. So that creates a perfect storm to successfully manage the triumvirate of challenges for TechOps. And as a solution provider, as a IT consultant for IT, right? Think of it as IT for IT, which is what we do. We really see this problem in spades. So, and we're talking about managing the triumvirate of people, projects, and productivity, right? How do we solve that problem? How do we really execute flawlessly for our customers across those three pillars, if you will, of the problem? So what we did in order to address that problem about 10 years ago in 2018, I say 8 years ago in 2018, we started developing a platform. We built a platform called Telescope AI. Think of it as AI meets TechOps, right? Here's AI, here's TechOps, and that's Telescope AI, right? And the idea was to take advantage of a platform that could help us solve those three problems: people, projects, and productivity. 8 years later, we have nearly 100% adoption. 1/3 of our users use it daily. 85% on the NPS score, if you guys are quite familiar with that, I'm sure. And it really helps drive the successful delivery of our IT projects for our clients. Some would argue it's one of the keys to our success. The AI components were crucial to ensuring that we could deliver on scale for our clients as we rapidly evolve and grow, both in terms of the people, the projects, and the productivity. And so building those components, this is what you're going to see now, the lessons that we learned as we went through the process of building those components. Now, in the interest of making this entertaining and interesting, we've gone pretty wide with the lessons. So you'll see about a half a dozen lessons that we're going to cover in the next 35 minutes. As a result, we had to sacrifice something, so we haven't gone as deep on any of those individual lessons in terms of the algorithms or the specifics behind them, because we just can't go that deep and that broad in that 30 minutes. But I'm more than happy to talk offline and even get some of our data scientists involved if necessary to help answer those questions for you if we get to a level of depth that's not there. Also, it's a relatively small group, so please, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'm sure I'll see it, and you can ask while I'm going. No need to wait till the end. If you'd like to wait till the end, that's fine too, but don't feel like you have to. Please hop right in. So let's talk about the first lesson that we learned, which was go for the lowest hanging fruit first. When we looked at how we could potentially implement AI, there were lots of crazy ideas about, hey, we could do this, and wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? And, sort of Arthur C. Clarke, kind of visions of what could be done with it. But what we decided is that we really wanted to go for the lowest hanging fruit, something that was easy to implement, solves the most basic problem, and kind of the lowest common denominator. So we've looked at what our challenge is to better understand our employees' roles on projects within the company, improves their satisfaction, and also results in a better client experience. In other words, what are you doing in your job, and are you happy in it, right? So we created this thing called a rotation score, and it serves as an early indicator of employee burnout. If you have someone in your organization who's been in that same role for 3 years, they've been getting great reviews, but they haven't been getting any promotions, they haven't been getting any compensation increases, they've just kind of been stagnating, possibility for burnout there, right? So we created this rotation score. And as a result, we redeployed over 10% of our talent every 3 to 6 months in our project successfully. So you could almost say that we've saved 10% of our people on a quarterly or semi-annual basis from leaving the organization, from getting frustrated, from getting upset and deciding that, hey, this isn't for me. This isn't the gig that I signed up for. That's the kind of example of what a rotation score looks like. So now let's peel back the layers of the onion. Let's understand this a little better. What did we do? Well, this is how the rotation score is calculated, at least the top 10 metrics that we look at. How long were they on no billable positions? How long were they around, but they weren't engaged in active client engagements? Number of projects with workload, right? What is the projects that were most important to them? How long was the last successful assignment, right? What are the values? And you've got ranges in terms of what is the critical value in the system, what's the weight we give to those values. Again, there was a whole lot of research, and this is what I said, we're going breadth, not depth. There was a whole lot of research driven on what should the weight be for each of these factors. Should we weigh it full, half, quarter, 3/4, 1.5, etc.? And there was also a critical value calculation. What should be the number at which we see a drop-off in response rate? Is it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year? What is that range that really represents the most important thing for us? And this is unique. It'll be unique for every one of your organizations. It's unique for every one of our clients, not just our company. Because this is a platform that we sell to customers, not just EPAM. And so you can see other things, last job function, seniority level, risk of leaving, attrition score, et cetera, et cetera. So there were a number of factors that weighed into the creation of this idea of a rotation score, of the ability to understand the metrics around how an individual, an employee is behaving in the company, how they're feeling about their role, their position. So what does that then look like when we implement it? And what does that mean for an individual? You as an individual will get a score that represents the likelihood that you're dissatisfied or happy. If there's a low dissatisfaction, you're obviously happy. If there's a high dissatisfaction, you're obviously someone that needs to see. This is an example of 5 years. They're high, right? They're pretty much baked. They're done. Put a fork in them. And then if you look over here, we can look at what factors are normal and critical in terms of their assessment. People, function, job, project assignment, where are things in the red zone that we really need to try to take a look at and say, hey, this is something that we have to address. So as an individual, it gives you a view, perhaps not necessarily to you, maybe to your management and to your organization. It gives a view on a per individual basis what that really means and what's going to drive the factors that make it more likely that someone's going to stay or leave the company from a what I do perspective, roles and responsibilities perspective. And then what does it look like in production? In our live system for ourselves and our clients, what does it actually look like? Well, you've got over on the right-hand side, rotation priority or rotation score. You've got someone with a high valuation, and then it tells you all of these attributes. How long have they been on the position? What are the projects? What are the job level? What are the assessments? What are the scores? What are the risk of leaving? Attitude, dedication, all the kinds of factors that helps you understand as a manager for your team what's the low, medium, or high, low, normal, or high possibility or rotation score for this person. So if you have a team of 20 people, you can open up Telescope AI, look at your 20 people, and immediately see, wow, this person is at a high level of rotation score risk, which means they really need to move on to go do something else because it's really going to be more useful for them to look at a different role.
What would be the minimum organization size where this is going to be effective?
That's a really good question. So the data that you have on your organization is more important necessarily than even size. I think a literal small size, probably no less than 50 to 100 people in order to make good data. Remember, we also augment our customers' data with our data set. Sorry. I forgot I'm wearing a microphone. And so what that means is that we take our 30,000 employees and all the aggregate data we have in the tech vertical as a result of being in that space and offer some baselines, if you will, based on that information. So even smaller size organizations can take advantage of this information, but you do need to have that good data in your organization. Remember, I had up here, you have to be collecting this type of info in order for it to work. So you have to have the info, then you have to have scale. We can help with the scale part if you have the info. If you don't have the info, we can help with that too, because we're a services company, that's what we do. But you need both sides of it. But that's a really good question.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how this relates to the lesson of choosing the lowest hanging fruit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get to that in the next one, right? Because what we originally started, so give me 1 second and I'll get to that. Any other questions? Okay. So this is what it looks like in production. It's really nice, slick UI, and everybody loves it, blah, blah. So don't just stop with the low-hanging fruit. I'm answering your question now. We actually thought about it from the bigger problem, how do we solve the larger problem of attrition? And when we were looking at sort of that gnarly problem, we realized, hey, wait a minute, we're biting off more than we can chew. Let's go to how satisfied people are in their current role as an early indicator, a canary in the coal mine for attrition. And so now my second lesson is don't just stop with the low-hanging fruit, go to the larger problem that your business is facing, which was the underlying KPI, the metrics of your organization that's going to make you more successful. So this sort of was a build-up to say start from the low-hanging fruit, but go to the next level. And to give you our example, we tried to start from the big level and actually ended up finding out that that's not the way to do it, right? So what was the larger problem? Is having an early indicator and making it more sophisticated. How do we make a rotation score more elaborate, more complex, more informed than just, hey, I'm happy in my role or not happy? So we calculate absolute level of risk. We are now able to have managers get an individual employee's perspective 35% of the time. 35% of the time, we have a good indicator of what's going to happen with this person. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we refine this model with the attrition score, because it'll get really interesting. We're up to about 85%, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the bottom line is don't just stop the low-hanging fruit you've solved with the first order problem. Now focus on the overall KPIs driving your business. So how is the attrition score calculated? What do we actually take a look at? Number of factors, right? Number of factors and the relative importance of those factors. Turns out the one at the top there, the single most important factor in our research, at least for what we've seen within our organization with our customers, is the last time they had a conversation with their manager about their roles, responsibility, their position, what they're doing. Turns out it's the single biggest indicator of whether someone's going to leave or not leave. If they haven't had a discussion in the last 6 months or so, it's a pretty good indication that someone's it raises their risk factor of attrition, let's put it that way, significantly so. Overshadows everything else, right? The other things are last time they've had the conversations, last time they've had management discussions about their career, their future, the last time, or their length of tenure in the company, because over time you have more quote unquote loyalty, right? Adhesion. Change is harder the longer you've been in a place. So those are the top 4 factors. In fact, some of these factors are so important, and you obviously can't influence the months in the company, can you? Well, you can actually, right? If you're successfully able to retain the people, then you can actually stack the deck in your favor by getting them to be with your company longer, which is also a very big factor. That's the 4th factor up there. So this gives you a sense of how we look at and calculate the attrition score and the importance of the various factors. Like I said, in our case, with our customers, the number 1 was the last time they've talked to a manager. All right, so what is the quality of the attrition score? What are we looking at? What are we doing? So we're looking at multiple factors across a dozen enterprise systems, and I think this is what you had asked earlier. This is the kind of data where we're pulling the data from to populate these models, right? We're going out to the HR systems. We're getting the project management systems. It might be Rally, TFS, Jira, right? Depending on what systems you're using. The business reports. Where are people going? What are they doing? Client feedback systems, both client and employees internally. Assessment systems, promotions, rankings. Learning management system, what kind of courses are employees taking? Are they engaged? Because remember, it's a measure of engagement. Attrition's a measure of engagement, right? Financial planning and analysis, right? How big are their projects? How are they budgeted? What are the referrals? Are people active? Are they referring their friends and family? Because if they really like you and want to stay, they're going to refer their friends and family. If they're not, they're not, right? So that might be an indication of engagement as well, right? So looking at over a dozen systems, and this is about where we're at, 50%, which gave us enough accuracy to legitimately raise concerns with managers. That's what the attrition score came out as, 50-50, which is better than nothing, right? Hey, we're good odds. Maybe there's a 50-50 chance this person's going to leave. So now we can raise it to a manager. It's not like the model's giving you a 30% or lower indication, so you're kind of like, I don't even know if it makes sense. But 50-50 is enough to raise concerns, talk to a manager, have a discussion, and see if there's really an issue here or not. Have the human intelligence augment the artificial intelligence. So that's the second lesson. But of course, we can do better. This is what the attrition score looks like in production. You can see the predicted attrition factors, your pool, your group of people, what the predicted informer looks like, relative risk of leaving, and this is what it looks like in the product for the team. So you can see a whole team and their predicted attrition score. So implementing AI is, of course, harder and takes longer than you think, right? It's a fact. You know it. It's a lesson that we learned. Don't believe the marketing hype. It's going to take longer and it's harder. So we thought, hey, now that we've got this attrition score, 50-50 is okay, right? But dude, what can we do to make it better? How can we increase that level of confidence in the factor? How can we trust it without having to second guess it, right? Like, yeah, this is solid. This really gives us good data that we can now rely upon. So we looked at data tuning. That was how we were going to then take this attrition score to the next level, this data tune it. We're going to dedupe it, harmonize it. We're going to adjust that data. We're going to clean it up, identify the parameters that are relevant, that are really moving the needle, and those that are not, toss those out that are not. And then ultimately get an attrition score that is now one of the key indicators for ourselves and our clients that are on the platform. So that was the third challenge, is it takes longer, and the lesson is it's a lot harder than you think. We thought we'd moved mountains by getting the attrition score, only to learn that it's even harder to make it smarter, right? So AI takes a lot of effort. So how did we do deduping? What did we actually do when we looked at the data sources and deduped it? Here's an example of potential data sources that we use to gather information. We were using Taleo, we were using Jira, we have CRM, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, other systems pulling in information about our people and our organization and coalescing down into a deduped set of data. So the more data we can get, the better we can do in deduping it, the better we're going to get from a result standpoint. Then we talked about how do we harmonize it and tune it. So we use the 652 design. We're looking at 6 cycles or 6 periods of 5 months each, right, of lagging 5 months each time period. We asked the models to then take that data set and produce a 2-month projection based on 6 sets of 5 months each. That then said each model was going to predict a future. And ultimately, we took all of that to then come back with an analysis. So in other words, we're training on the 5 past data periods of 5 months each, with known conditions with known outcomes. This is based on real data, right? And then we're saying to the system, okay, now we want you to predict, all the machine learning models, we want you to predict what the next 2 months are going to look like based on that data set, which is known conditions with unknown outcomes, right? That we're asking you to predict model. And then we factor that back in. You see it on the right there. We factor that back into the ongoing data set. And these are the machine learning models that we're using in the background, right? The random forest, survival, gradient boost, extreme gradient boost, and personalized, penalized logistics, right? So these are the models that we're implementing, the algorithms we're implementing, and having each of these 5 models do this same calculation to then harmonize across that data, say, how do we make it smarter? How do we get from 50% on up? How do we lift that capability, the predictive capability, right? Confidence level, if you will. So what are the data factors and how are we calculating and tuning it? We went from those 5 or 6 that you saw in the score, the rotation score, to the 10 or 12 in the attrition score, to now over 40 different factors of data that we pull in. Things like even stock, obviously that has information. Loan and housing, right? It actually has an impact on person's willingness to leave the organization. Their gender, right? Their manager's gender, believe it or not, has an impact, right? Things that you might not necessarily think of that do have an impact, do have an impact. So it was a pretty amazing level of analysis to understand. Yammer influence, believe it or not, actually, at least in our organization, has an impact. likelihood of someone to leave. So there's a number of different things that we looked at to really tune the data set, to make it smarter, to make the model more intelligent, to make it better able to predictively tell us what's going on and where we're at. Yeah.
Was that list the list that made a huge impact into your inference, or just the ones that you tried?
No, these are what they survived the vetting. As I was going to say, on this slide, we had 30 others in addition to these 40 plus that didn't survive the vetting. They didn't have a measurable or meaningful impact on our attrition score calculations.
And it seems like it's quite kind of cultural thing. Is it based on United States company? What was the
Yes.
proportion of the
Sure.
nationality of the...
Yes, sure. I was going to get to that in this slide. So we initially started with 4,000 colleagues in Europe. That was the original data set, right? And now we cover the vast majority of like 75% of our resources, which are 30,000 people, so about, 21,000 people worldwide are covered by this model. And you're absolutely right. Great observation. These factors are regional, right? They're regional even more. So even though these are all the factors we have, some of these factors are weighted more heavily in certain regions and weighted less heavily in other regions, depending upon the relevant value and importance that they have in regional variance. So some regions, the weight changes. The factors don't dramatically change, but the weighting of some of the factors changes based on regions.
So, sir, will you talk about the firefighting later? Firefighting, something like that?
So what we're talking about here is how we can help an organization look at optimizing their TechOps, which gives you, an IT organization, a better opportunity to strategize and not have to firefight. You're not actually dealing with how you're dealing with firefighting, right? Because a lot of our IT organizations, our customers, are in reactive mode because they're trying to deal with people, projects, and productivity. Maybe you missed the first part of the presentation, right? So what we're talking about here is the lessons we've learned as we've implemented these AI solutions to help our customers be better able to build their technologies, their solutions, so that they can do more strategizing and less firefighting, which is what we were struggling. So what I was saying, the context setting was in the beginning of why we're going down this path of talking about these types of particular problems we faced when implementing AI solutions for TechOps, for our IT customers.
This is like a human attrition, so this is like human resource attrition.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? Because remember, as I said in the beginning, when you're thinking about the problem of IT, you've got people, projects, and productivity. You have all three elements with IT. You can't just talk about the people, you can't just talk about the projects, you can't just talk about the productivity. You have to look at all three factors. And so some of the lessons I'm talking about here are some of the lessons we learned in developing this AI capability in the platform around the IT people, right? These are IT organization employees, right? And it matters which people you have in your organization for IT in order for IT to succeed, right? If you don't have the right people with the right skill set, you're not going to succeed, right? And that's one of the key challenges for our organization. So what I was saying is that its first results were published in 2015. We have over a dozen data sources today that are in the platform. 40 plus features in the model, 5 learning algorithms are used, and we're at greater than 85% degree of confidence with our data at this point. We can, with a fairly high degree of certainty, determine on this model whether someone is an attrition risk, and then we can now actively and proactively manage against that for our organization, for our clients and our customers, right? So we took it from, sure.
Just curious, in addition to the risk factor, does it also give you an insight into which of the categories is the contributing factor that, like,
Yes.
That,
Yes. Yeah, exactly, right? Which is the risk factor, and so who are the people most at risk, and what are the factors that are red for them?
Like what matters to them?
What matters to them, exactly. And the example that I gave in the other, I didn't show the UI in this one, but I showed it earlier in terms of being able to look at the factors and say, these are red, these are green. It's just like that, but it's got more risk factors for the attrition. So you can see it in greater detail, right? It's not just, hey, this person's a problem, good luck. That would be kind of silly. But I apologize, I didn't show that screenshot, I don't think. But just wanted to give you a sense of how we came from zero, right, because we had nothing. Then we moved up to 50%, and now we're in the 85%. So it's a pretty good model, right? it varies by customer too, right? Some of our customers have a very different data set than we do. And so they have different factors, right? We have to work with the data science model for every customer. It takes time to train it, takes time to learn it. Remember I told you it's a 652 model? So you're talking about 30 months worth of data, right? If you have historical plus your future and actual, so it takes time. It's not overnight. That's why I said it takes longer and it's a lot harder than you might think. Focus on real world problems. So when we were looking at how AI could help us, one of our biggest challenges is really understanding the background of our people and understanding how that fits in with the needs that the customers have, right? Because we're really all about making sure we find the right person for the right client at the right time. That's what IT services is all about as a services company. And in order to do that, we need to understand our people. And in order to understand our people, they need to tell us more stuff about themselves, because we can't automatically divine information about them. We do some of it, but we don't really have enough, right? So we developed something called a CV score to help analyze their resumes, their backgrounds, to better understand the quality of their information and our ability to then make it available for our clients as well as use it internally. So what did we do with the CV score? So a couple of things we analyzed to better understand the quality of information about our people. First of all, as we have people, what is their completeness? What is the likelihood that they're going to fulfill that background information? The more people we had, it looked like the better or worse we were doing in filling out the CVs, depending on the set of data that we're asking. And then the longer they were in the organization, the harder it became to get them to fill out that information. Because they kind of felt like, hey, you know what? I don't really want to be doing this because I've already done a lot of this information. You should know me by now. So we had to find a more intelligent way to interact with our employees to get them to tell them about us. In other words, if I've been with the company for 2 years or 3 years, you should know about me. I'm not really going to go update my information about myself in your records, right? That was the nature of the information that we discovered, that it was really hard to get this information from our people to us, even though it's critical for us to know this in order to be able to succeed in business. So we built a CV score that essentially analyzes the information provided to us by employees as a part of their projects, as part of their engagements, to determine whether they're giving us enough information or insufficient information as a metric to get employees to participate in the process of giving us enough information. So as projects close, they're required to submit a closure report on here's what I've done in the project, here's what I did for the execution. Think of it as an IT project end, right? You're going to have a output at the end of your IT project. So as a result of that, we put a CV score that helps us understand what is good and isn't good information. You see a 27 versus a 64 versus an 82, red, yellow, green, and the ability to then analyze what's going there. Now, the way to do that, what's behind that, is we actually are parsing through all of that information, comparing it to an algorithm that we've built that says this is enough information or this is not enough information about that respective field, right? So we have a background, an operation happening in the back end that actually is comparing these factors against a set standard based on principles that we've established, right? So what does that then mean? So for our platform in production, you have a score that shows an employee whether their CV is good, bad, or good, average, or bad, right? And on top of that, we actually go and identify specific areas, again, based on the algorithm, that says, here's an area that you really could look at to improve in your CV. For example, you don't have enough description in this project position, and therefore you're getting a low score as a result of that. So not only analyzing it and giving a person a score so they can be measured and measure themselves and others, but also then giving them recommendations on where they've been deficient. And like you'd asked earlier, not just why you're bad or that you are bad, but why you're bad, right? And where you can fix it to make it better. 10 minutes left? Okay. So the fifth lesson is take it to its logical conclusion. So if you developed a mechanism to affect your critical KPIs, for us it was understanding our people, take it to its logical conclusion, driving the maximum benefit. So now that we've got a great collection of CVs and resumes, we wanted to match them to positions that suited them. Right? So we built this thing called the employee to position match, right? So now we've got an employee, we've got positions, and we're matching them, right? So that we're able to increase job satisfaction for people. So we looked at it and we said, hey, this is our positions, this is our employee factors. Let's look at the previous project attributes and compare them against their skill set. What projects were employees on? How did that map to their skill set? What was the assessment of those projects? How did they do, right? Did they do well? Did they do poorly? And then we can now have that data feed or inform the algorithm that then it goes to train the model that says, okay, this is a better fit for this person or this is a less good fit for this person. The project to person, or in this case, person to project, right? And that is essentially giving an employee the following benefits. Skill set. You got the positions that are best fit to you. Opportunity. You find out about positions you didn't know about. Exposure, you're exposed to positions that you might not have been aware of that can move your career forward. Streamline, it's easier to find the positions and be self-selected. It's almost like you're nominated for those positions because that's actually what's happening. It's a proactive as opposed to reactive. You're not having to find these things, they're coming to you. And again, we know that you're potentially an attrition risk or a flight risk because of your score. And then finally, it's curated. You're getting a small list that you're picking from as opposed to a long list. So at the end of the day, the smart matching of employee to position basically says for the individual, hey, those are the 4 positions that might be most interesting and compelling for you. From wherever you are today, that's the stuff that matches you, right? Amongst all of the universe of what we have to offer. Giving people a proactive career path to help move them forward and give them the opportunity to succeed. If you think about the last one, which is to flip the problem on its head, so we got employee to position, but at the end of the day, our customers want the best employees in those positions, so it's a position to employee. Realize that the best position for you may not necessarily mean that you are the best employee from a customer's perspective for that position. There may be somebody with more experience, somebody with more knowledge or expertise, somebody with more education, etc., that might be better suited for that role than you are. So we flipped the problem on its head by building a position to employee matching algorithm that basically talks about the same perspective but looks at it from the other side and kind of creates a demand curve meet in the middle. And the benefit to the employee is, employer, our clients, is they get people with the best skills, background experience, the right availability. It's a curated set of lists. They get the exposure to people they might not have thought of, and that reduces the hiring time. And the net outcome then is the system in production will actually take a position and it'll recommend the top 10 candidates based on that position, and you'll be able to look at each of those individuals and the attributes around them that makes them most highly recommended, and you can use sliders to move those factors if there are things that matter more to you, like English speaking or skills or job level or candidates, whether they're busy, which country, which location, relocation, primary skill. You can move those slider factors to change that list of candidates to reflect the ones that matter most to you. So if you think about what Telescope AI is all about, people, projects, and productivity, and how we help our customers, a recap on the lessons: go for the hanging fruit, don't just stop there. Implementing it is harder, it takes longer than you think it will. Focus on the real world problems your business is challenged with. Once you have that implementation, take it to its logical conclusion. And last but not least, once you've implemented it, think about it from the other side. Right? You've implemented it one way, now flip it on its head and see if there's another application or use case from the other side that could benefit your organization. And I think I'm in time.
You have 6 minutes.
Excellent. I tried to speed through the end there so we had some time for Q&A. So questions, concerns, criticisms, comments, feedback, input? No. Yes, sir.
So on the inputs that go into the valuation of that, the score that you have.
The attrition score?
Attrition score.
Yep.
You have the gender and age. So would that be a problem for the clients or any kind of lawsuits at a later point of time?
So again, it depends on the geography, it depends on the region, it depends on the data. We're using it as a way to understand people. We're not making judgments based on that, right? You're not promoted or not, there's no career advancement associated with it. We're trying to understand whether you're going to leave the company or not leaving the company. So it doesn't affect you as an individual other than give us an early indication whether you're likely to leave the organization. Where you run into more of a risk is if you're using it in some way to understand, to promote or drive that individual. We're not. We're using it as a loss mitigation. We're not using it as a way to drive their career. So, in other words, we know that certain people in certain geographies, certain genders are more likely to leave, so we put them in the at-risk. So it actually is to your benefit. It's not anything that's hurting you because we're potentially understanding that you might be more likely to leave. So we want to put programs or policies and procedures in place to retain you, to save you as an employee, not to lose you in an organization. For example, we all know that women in IT at higher levels is very difficult to retain them. So if we know that someone is going to be potentially harder to retain, then we can implement programs in various geographies to retain people because we see that we're losing people of a certain variety. It's no different than a post-exit analysis of all the people that have left our company that says, hey, these people of the gender have left the company, we need to build a program to do that. This is doing it in situ, real time, to say, hey, we know that this could be a challenge, so we're doing something proactive. So it's a very different application.
So can I flip that question and say, can we use, take out those parameters and still get the right?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, there's certain geographies where it's not even, the weight on it is zero, right? Or it's next to nothing because it's not as important for that geography, for that market, for that region. Yeah, it is very local and regionalized. Sir?
In terms of the customer base, is it generally only going to work, or I guess scale, by using your existing data for IT organizations, or could something like a group of 100 masters and PhD engineers, is that still like an adequate population?
I mean, we have done it on lots of different group sizes, and we've done it on lots of different types of people, not just IT people. Doesn't have to be IT. So, for example, one of our customers is an oil and gas major, and they use it to look at their research scientists. We have some folks in the life sciences vertical who do it for the same thing, looking at their research scientists. Different types of research scientists, obviously, right? But absolutely, it doesn't have to be applied only to IT. That's our application, obviously. So
I saw that your system has recommended some kind of rotation. Individual, this person could be a good candidate.
Yep.
Two questions around that. Does it only recommend rotating it in your company, or does it also recommend you need to hire a new guy with these kind of
skills.
Skill set?
Yeah.
That's one. And
Okay.
the thing is that, sorry, I forgot the word.
So yeah, let me answer that, and then you come up with the other one. So when we implemented this, the position to employee match, it solved the problem you were talking about, which is if you had a position and the top 10 candidates for that position were like 50% or lower, because these are candidates from within the organization, then that's an indication that we need to go to market and hire somebody because we don't have the type of people that our customers need and want. So that problem, initially the rotation was not trying to solve that problem, but we found that that was a problem. That's why we built this position to employee match. And the outcome of this is that when we see positions in the marketplace where our top 10 candidates are less than 50%, it's a red flag that we need to go to the market and acquire this type of talent because we don't have it in-house. Meaning, even if we were to rotate somebody out of a project and put them into this position, we still couldn't satisfy what this position wants because we don't have anybody like that.
Nice.
Which answers your question, I think.
Nice. Okay, my second question is that I see that it would recommend people, individuals, or individual products or projects.
Right.
Talking about rotation, it should have been much more about the total optimization. There could be someone that's best for this project, but better to assign it to a different project to make it much more better as a whole company.
Yeah.
Does it?
So,
recommendation?
I mean, that might be a further evolution of the rotation score, because that was really designed in helping to get an idea of how to retain talent, right? And how do we keep this motivated, engaged, and intelligent individual in our organization, right? Not so much about our organization overall, because the thinking is that if everybody's happy, then the output is going to be happy. But you're right, that rotation score doesn't take into account that, yeah, we might want to rotate this person into that role, but it might be more important to rotate someone else into that role because their rotation is more important. But the way that happens indirectly is the resource managers, the people managing these individuals, see the rotation scores for their teams and the groups that they're managing. So they can better assess, well, Bob's a 70 and Steve is an 80 and Jill is a 90. So wow, Jill is the one that I'm going to rotate into this position or that position. So they can kind of look at the overall health of their organization with regards to rotation. But no, I don't, that's not necessarily in our factor. I wish it was. Okay. Thank you.